Hi, and welcome to Piano TV. So today we are going to work on a very sad and melancholic American folk tune called House of the Rising Sun. And we're going to talk about the history of the song a little bit, and I'll play it for you and so you can see the sheet music and how it all works together, and we'll talk some of the finer points that make this piece difficult, even though it's still relatively suited to beginners. If you've been playing for a few months, you'll probably be able to tackle this one. So let's get started. So in the 60s, a band called The Animals recorded House of the Rising Sun and turned it into a really big hit. But it's actually quite a bit older than that. It probably originated in England in the 18th or 19th century as just like a folk tune. And then English folk who moved over to New Orleans would have then adapted it to suit the location, the new location, because the lyrics are very New Orleans based. And there's some speculation as to what the lyrics are about. Some people think the House of the Rising Sun is a brothel. Other people think that maybe it was a prison. So I'll let you read the lyrics and come to your own conclusion on what you think that might be. But at the very least, we can all agree on the fact that this is just a sad song. So I'm going to play it for you so you can hear what it sounds like, and then we'll talk more details. Okay, so time for the basics. There is one sharp, which is telling us that this is either in the key of G major or E minor, because those are the two key signatures that have a sharp. However, we know right away that it's going to be in the key of E minor because that's the first chord, and that's a pretty significant clue there. Moderato here, I know that's some crazy difficult Italian, just means to play at a moderate tempo. And then con pedal, I might be mispronouncing that, but that's how I usually say it, just means with pedal. So for this song, you're going to pedal in with the syncopated pedal style, which we talked about in a previous video, and I'll link that on the screen in case you missed that, because it's a pedaling technique that you use for the vast majority of pieces that require pedal. So make sure you understand how to do that first. And we have this new time signature 6/8, which we talked about in a previous video. I'll also link that on the screen. That was the one we just did a couple days ago. And in this piece, the counting is actually pretty simple because the left hand is almost a constant string of eighth notes. So when you're in 6/8, you'll remember that every eighth note gets one beat. So when you count it, that's beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and then that's the 4th, 5th, and 6th. So very easy to count if you keep your left hand nice and steady. The biggest thing to watch out for is that you're matching up notes in the right spots. So making sure you're playing this right hand note right on the 6th beat, and that you're playing this E right on that first beat. Now, there's a bunch of ties, so make sure you're not pressing that note down, that you're just holding it all the way through, and that you're aligning the notes where they belong. Sometimes what I'll do with my students, or even myself, depending on the piece, is I'll actually physically draw in lines in the music if I'm having a hard time seeing where everything matches. So if that's something that you think would help, definitely do that. If you want to simplify this arrangement and make it more complicated with the broken pattern later instead of right off the bat, which is totally acceptable, and we'll talk about that more at the keyboard in a second here, all you have to do is follow the chord symbols up top. So if you remember, the little m means minor, so this is an E minor chord. Now, when you have something like this with a G/D, the first letter is going to be the actual chord, so that's a G major chord. But the bottom note is going to be a D. And if you look in the left hand, you can see that that's true. And this is an A major chord, and the bottom note is an E. So just a little clue about how chords are written. I think sometimes it's best to learn pieces like this in stages. So maybe take a crack at the right hand first by itself to get a feel for it, and then maybe try the chords out by themselves. And then what I would suggest to do is simple held solid chords while you play the right hand like this. Even really reading the bass clef notes at this point. I'm actually just following the chord symbols and the right hand notes in order to do that. And once it becomes easy with the sustain notes and you're matching everything up in the right spot, that's really important, you can start trying it with the broken chord pattern, taking care to still line up everything properly like I mentioned earlier. In the second page, the left hand pattern changes. It ups the ante a little bit, but luckily the right hand is pretty much exactly the same. So instead of just being a broken chord pattern, this is called an arpeggio. So what it's doing is it's outlining the notes of the chord. So this one is E minor. So you have an E, a G, and a B. And then it finishes it off with that top note of the chord. So it kind of like it goes full circle, playing the three notes and then that original starting note of the chord. This is a really common accompaniment pattern, but it requires a change of fingering to be able to play the pattern effectively, which we'll look at on the keyboard. Normally when we do a broken chord, we do the fingers 5, 3, and 1. But now that we have to stretch up to this top note, like here, just using C major chord as an example, you have to adjust the fingering. So obviously you don't want to do any weird crossover, so the best way to do this is to use fingers 5, 3, 2, and 1. And it's a little bit of a stretch. You don't have to rigidly keep every finger waiting on exactly the right note. It's better for hand posture and, you know, the health and safety of your hands as you play piano to be fluid instead of locked. So instead of playing like this, you want to play with a bit more wrist movement. See how I'm stretching up to that top note and then releasing my pinky off that bottom note just so I don't have to like claw hand that. For the rest of the second page, you'll be using this pattern no matter what the chord is. So once you memorize the pattern, it gets a lot easier. You're doing E minor, G major, A major, and C major. You'll notice it's the same 1, 3, 5 thumb and the exact same span. So practice this left hand pattern alone until you can do it without a struggle. What I think is a good way to do it is, can you play it without looking at your hands at all? Can you, well, you can't tell that I'm not looking at my hands, but if you can kind of like stare up at the sky and be able to tell where you're going and still hit the right notes, that's a good sign that you've got it all figured out. And that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the piece, and as always, the sheet music is linked below in the description tab, so you can just go check that out, or go to pianotv.net, where all the music and stuff and the videos live. It's their home. Give this video a thumbs up if you like the tune House of the Rising Sun, and I will catch you on the flip side. Nope. Okay, one more time.